everyone, welcome to another Every Tuesday tutorial. In this week's tutorial, we're going to be creating a bouquet of flat flowers entirely in Procreate. So what you see on screen is exactly what we're going to be creating together. As always, the color palette is free, and right in the video description, just tap on that link and you can download and install it. The only brush that we're using for this is my free monoweight brush. You can pick it up when you become a free Every Tuesday email subscriber. So there's a link in the video description to that as well. All right, so I'm going to create a brand new document that is 1500 pixels by 1500 pixels at 300 dpi. Okay, so let's drop in our background color. Go to your layers, tap on background color and select this light blue color. And now we've got our background all set. So when we're laying this out, we want to focus on our largest flowers first. Whenever you're creating a bouquet like this, the main two things you want to look at are scale and variety. So we're going to start with scale first, so the largest flowers, and we're going to arrange those. Then we're going to move to medium flowers, small flowers, and then we're going to finish everything off by filling it with foliage in the background. So we're going to keep variety with our florals and change up the scale of our flowers as we move throughout our bouquet. So the largest flowers are our white flowers, and the first one is kind of a top view of an opening or opened up rose, and then the other one is more of a petaled flower. If you caught my tutorial last week on loose watercolor florals in Procreate, you already know the basics of creating a rose, so we're just going to do a flat style version of this. So whenever you're creating any artwork in Procreate, you need to remember that you want to create your artwork at as large of a size as you will need it, because you can always scale down and maintain image quality, but as soon as you scale up, you're stretching those pixels and the edges will become pixelated and blurry. So as long as you always create your artwork larger than you need it or as large as you need it, then you will only ever be scaling down. So keep that in mind as you work. It's better to create something too big than too small. For the very first layer, we're going to create the center of our rose. So I'm just going to label this center, and we're going to grab our darkest green color and just draw a circle, stop and hold it. I'm going to scale this down a little bit, and then fill it in with color. And then we're going to come to our second darkest green color and then just put some dots in the center. Okay, once you have that, create a brand new layer, drag it beneath the center, and we're just going to call this lines. And like we talked about in last week's tutorial, we're going to create those subtle lines that go around the rose. So I'm going to grab the second lightest color right here and just draw those lines in. Okay, once you have your lines, create a brand new layer, drag it underneath your lines, and just call this one outline. And we're just going to draw the outline shape of our rose, so grab your lightest color and just give some reference to the petals around the outside. Once you have your outline all set, we're going to group all of these together. So slide them to the right, choose group, and we're just going to label this one rose. And I'm actually going to scale this one down just slightly to give myself some room for my petaled flower. So we're going to do the exact same thing for this. So create a brand new layer. We're going to start with the center first. So for this one, we're going to grab our darkest color once again, draw a circle, drop in color, grab the second darkest green, put some dots in the center. And for this one, we're going to grab the lightest color green and put some extra dots around it. Okay, label this layer center. Okay, create a new layer, drag it underneath the center layer. Label this one petals 1, and this one will be our lightest white color, and draw some really simple petals. Create a brand new layer, drag it underneath petals 1, label this one petals 2. And for this one, we're going to grab the second darkest white color and then just fill in the gaps with extra petals behind it so it looks very layered. Okay, now we can group all of these layers together and label this one petaled flower. All right, and if you remember my tutorial from a couple weeks ago where we created simple peonies, we're going to do the exact same process right now. We're just going to change up our center a little bit to keep it a flat style. So we're going to create a brand new layer. I'm going to grab my medium pink color right here, and we're going to draw a teardrop shape that's upside down, fill that with color. I'm going to label this one petal 1, create a brand new layer, drag it underneath, call this petal 2, grab the lightest pink color and put 2 side by side, kind of like a heart, fill that in, And now we're going to create a brand new layer, drag it underneath petal 2, label this petal 3. Grab the darkest color and then just fill in these gaps. Okay, and then right in between them, so right above petal 3, we're just going to label this one dots, grab the white color and just put in some dots. And now at the very top, on top of petal 1, we're going to create a new layer. Grab your darkest green color and we're going to draw a small stem on this and then create that transition area from where the stem hits the petals. All right, and this is our peony, so we're going to drag, I'm going to label this one stem, drag all of these to the right, group them together and call this one peony. All right, and this one's going to be underneath all of these flowers, so I'm going to drag it all the way to the bottom, right above my background color layer, and now I can rotate this to fit in between them. And that's looking good. There's a lot of just little adjusting, tweaking, rotating to make sure everything fits just so in this. So I'm going to duplicate my peony and make it face the other way to start changing up the scale because we're going to reduce the size of that just slightly. So copy your peony layer, drag it to the left and choose duplicate. And then on the smaller one, which I'm going to use this bottom one, let me call this one small peony. We're going to grab it, drag it, hit flip horizontal, and then rotate this around and then reduce the size of it just slightly. All right, so now we have all of our large flowers complete, and everything we do now is going to be unifying everything together with supporting elements. So we're going to move on to our medium-sized flowers, which include buds and baby's breath, and then we're going to move into our foliage. So we're going to create a flower bud first. So I'm going to create a brand new layer. We're going to grab our medium pink color, and you're just going to draw an oval. It's okay wherever you want to draw this because we're going to reposition it later. And then I'm going to grab my lightest pink color, reduce the size of this, put some lines in this oval. Up at the top, I'm going to grab my darkest pink color and just put some little details up at the top. Create a new layer. So this one's going to be called bud. This one's going to be called stem. I'm going to grab my medium green color, increase my weight up to about 6%, give myself a stem, and then draw that transition in. And I'm also going to give myself just a few very simple leaves. Okay, and now we have a flower bud. So let's group these together, label this one flower bud, and we're going to drag this beneath the rose layer and above the peony layer. And now we're going to reposition it. So about here, I'm going to rotate it a little bit. Duplicate this, bring the copy down here and rotate it. I'm going to rescale it just a little bit. Duplicate again and reposition. I will mention I'm not quite sure why Procreate does this, but sometimes if you rotate an item too many times, it automatically starts getting a little blurrier or more pixelated. So if that happens to you, just duplicate your very first original artwork and then drag it in and reposition it. Don't duplicate the one that started getting blurry because it'll just keep getting blurrier. So I just wanted to mention that. Okay, so now we've got our buds in here, and now we're going to move on to some simple clusters of small flowers. So I'm going to come back up to the top so we can draw it free of everything else. Create a new layer. I'm going to grab my white and I'm going to make this fairly large. I'm up to about 9%, and I'm just going to do a big cluster of lines. Okay, and now create a new layer. Drag this layer beneath your little cluster of flowers. Label this one stem. I'm going to label this one just cluster. For the stem on this one, we're going to use our darkest green color again, and I'm going to reduce the size down to about 3%. Draw your line and then just give reference to these connecting to each other throughout it. So I'm going to group these together and just call this cluster. And for this one, I'm going to position this original one right between my two peonies. And I'm going to drag this one above my flower bud, but beneath my rose layer. That looks good. Duplicate, bring another one over here near my flower buds. Okay, and then the last flowers, we're just going to create some very simple baby's breath. So we're going to create a brand new layer up at the top. For the center, we're going to use this lightest green color. And I'm going to be using about a 7% size brush. I'm going to put a bunch of dots around here, just very sporadically. And then create a new layer, drag it underneath the previous layer. This one's going to be called centers, and this one will be called petals. So your petals are underneath your centers, and your petals are going to be white, so grab that. And around each one of these centers, you're just going to draw 5 petals. Okay, once you have your little cluster of baby's breath, now we're going to add in a stem, and the stem is going to be behind the previous 2 layers. So drag it underneath the petals layer, label this one stem. We're going to use the same lime green color that we used for the centers. I'm going to reduce the size down to 4%. Actually, I'm going to go down to 3%. That seems a little thick. Okay, once you have your baby's breath, group these together, label them baby's breath. And this one we're going to drag all the way underneath the flower bud layer, but keep it above the peony layer. And we're going to drag it right behind this first flower bud, duplicate it, and add 2 of them right down here. All right, now we have all of our flowers in here. I'm actually going to move all of these, make sure I got all these selected, just move everything down just a little bit. Kind of felt a little high on there. Okay, so now we're going to start adding in our foliage, and our foliage is going to be at the very bottom of everything underneath all of our flowers so it can support them. So the first color we're going to use is our lime green. So I'm going to just call this one lime green. And I've got my monoweight brush still selected, and the shape of this foliage, you can draw a line up, and this one's going to have kind of oval-like leaves. Okay, so this one is going to go right over here, and then we're going to put another one right down here. Okay, the next one's going to be dark green, and it's going to sit above our lime green, so I'm just going to label this one dark green. And for this one, I've got my dark green color, and this is kind of your typical looking foliage. So we've got our stem, and then we've got a leaf at the top, and then leaves on each side. One of these is going to go right over here, duplicate it, and we're going to add another one over here. Finally, we're going to add in our dark blue leaves. So I'm going to come to the very bottom, create a new layer, drag this underneath my lime green, and just label this one dark blue. Grab our dark blue color and create some large supporting leaves. So this first type of leaf we've created before together. It's got notches on the sides, comes up, notches, notches. Reposition this one. I'm going to keep these ones on separate layers. That way I can move them around. Okay, create another layer. For behind the peonies, I'm going to increase my brush size to about 6%, and I'm just going to create a large branch that has some big leaves on it. Okay, we'll drop this one behind our peonies. Let's see how that looks. I think I want to make this one a little thicker. All right, I see some light blue peeking through here, so I'm just going to fill this one in with dark blue so it looks like the foliage goes all the way to the center. And then the last thing I'm going to do is just add a few dark leaves right behind my open rows. So these ones are just going to be kind of spiky. And if you ever need to make sure that your paths are closed so you can drop color into them, feel free to turn off some of your layers. So I know that this one is my rose, so if I turn that off, I can kind of see where my gaps are with this final leaf. And then I can fill it in with color, turn my rose back on, and now everything looks nice and full. All right, so that looks good. I'm just going to center everything. Let me group all of my foliage elements together. group, label this foliage. And now I can just select everything. Got a bunch of layers here. And I can move them all together. I can actually group them all together too that way, because I know I'm going to keep everything the way they are. And there you go. So that's how to create a flat style floral bouquet directly in Procreate. Once again, the free color palette and that free brush that we used are right in the video description. So just click into there and you can have access to both of them. If you enjoyed this tutorial, please hit the like button, subscribe, and don't forget to hit the bell icon so you can be notified of new tutorials just like this one in the future. For more Procreate and design freebies, head on over to my site, every-tuesday.com. You can also find me over on Instagram. My handle is everytuesday. If you try this out and post it there, I would love it if you tag me. Thanks so much for watching, and I will see you next week.